look at those differences as opportunity to build synergies. And when we talk about differences, there are also just far too many myths, biases, wrong notions about generations. And sometimes we believe that millennials are highly tech-savvy, and Gen X and baby boomers are not. But my 80-year-old father has disproved that. And when the first time I gifted him a basic mobile set, he was struggling to send an SMS, open and read an SMS. Today, he can take pictures, he can use the smartphone to do a video recording and send it to his children on WhatsApp. So an 80-year-old man can do that. So believing that Gen Y or millennials are tech-savvy and Gen X and baby boomers are not, that's a myth. There are far too many myths about generations, far too many biases and misconceptions. What we need to do is rise above the myths and start looking at the facts. Let's look at some of the facts. These are research findings. And there's one research finding which says majority of millennials will decide not to join an organization which has banned social media. It's a fact. It's a research finding. Today, millennials at this very young age are already in debt. They're already burdened with loans. And why this happens? Because the increasing cost of education, increasing cost of lifestyle, increasing cost of living, all that has led to millennials getting into debts. This is a fact. Another interesting fact, contrary to popular belief, the myth is millennials actually do not care for others. They're very self-centered. They do not engage in charity. But contrary to popular belief, the research finding says more than 80% of millennials actually spend their time and money on charity. That's an interesting finding. 50% of our global executives are going to retire in less than 5 years. So, ladies and gentlemen, who are going to replace them? Millennials, aren't they? So, if you agree with that, by 2025, 3 out of 5 people in the workforce, or 3 out of 4, are going to be millennials. So now the question is, are we ready to receive them? Are we ready to engage with them? Are we ready to develop them? And as the tenure of the millennials in the organization starts shrinking, which is just about 2 years compared to about 5 years for Gen X, and about 7 years for Gen Y or millennials, now the question is, how are we going to... We know that 3 out of 4 are millennials. We know that they're going to replace our global executives, but we also know that they're not going to stay. That the chances of staying back to the companies is pretty less. So how do we prepare ourselves as the makers and the builders and the shapers of the future workforce? How are we going to make sure that they stay in the organization? 87% of the management, the millennials actually took on management roles. Very, very high compared to the Gen X and Gen Y. So it's significantly changing the demographics at the workplace. 20% of people, 20% of mid-level executives mentioned that their manager, their boss is younger to them. Interesting statistics. And some more interesting statistics, which is important to look at. The cost of replacing a millennial is about $15,000 to $20,000 at the low end. At the high end, it can be anywhere between 50% to 200% of the salary of that employee. Too much of text here. I'm not going to read them verbatim, but I want to call out the differences. The differences between baby boomers, Gen X and Gen Y, and the differences because of the way they have been groomed, their upbringing, the values that have grown up with, the socioeconomic situation that prevailed during their childhood or during their formative age, and their, everything that influence them. So it's the demographics, it's the lifestyle, it's the work style, the preferences of the workplace, all that makes them different from each other. And because of these differences lead to conflict. And what kind of conflict do we have at the workplace? Here is the conflict. This is what the baby boomers tell about the millennials. This is what they say. What do they say? Well, they have no respect for superiors, they have no respect for elders, they're lazy, they're not serious about life, they require a lot of supervision, and so on. But the conflict continues. There are equally harsh words said by the millennials about the baby boomers. And what do they say? They say, oh God, this manager, doesn't he have a family? What the hell he is doing at the office all the time? That guy is too rigid. Well, he's absolutely close-minded. I really cannot take this kind of micromanaging. This is too much. So this is where the conflict starts. And that's what we call generational conflict, a generational rift. And I'm standing here in front of you today to tell you that this generational rift really can be channelized in a very constructive and positive way, and then we can actually make it a competitive and strategic advantage for the organization. How can we do that? How can we really leverage the power of multi-generational workforce? How can we do that? What are the best-in-class organizations are doing? The best-in-class organizations are focusing on their strengths. They know that each generation has some strength. They know that the baby boomers and Gen X are very hardworking, absolutely loyal to the organization. They bring in a lot of strategic perspective. They know that the millennials are very strong. They're good at multitasking. They have grown with the internet age. They've grown with technology. So how can we bring these strengths together and then exponentially optimize the capability of the organization? That's what they're focusing on. They are looking at increasing productivity by bringing these generations together. They are looking at building an ecosystem where these are the transformational initiatives that they take up, the life-changing activities that they take up. They provide mentoring to the millennial population. Millennials want to get feedback. They want to get feedback all the time, maybe 3 times a week. They're doing reverse mentoring, and we are, in our organization, very, very strong in driving a reverse mentoring program where millennials stand up and then mentor Gen X and baby boomers. They're doing diversity orientation for managers to understand their millennial team members. And it's not something that should happen only in organizations. We should also provide the same coaching to our parents who don't know, who are clueless about dealing with their teenage sons and daughters. So this orientation is absolutely essential. They are walking the talk. The leaders who are talking about diversity, the leaders who are talking about creating opportunities for all generations, they really need to establish that by implementing, doing what they are preaching about, practicing what they are preaching, creating cohorts where people from multiple generations can come together and have an opportunity to share their views. And we have created in our organization multiple platforms, including digital, virtual, and physical, where these people from different generations come together and then give vent to their feelings. But now the question is, leveraging the generational diversity as a strength is not about driving a few initiatives, running a few programs, taking a few steps in isolation. It's about looking at the entire people's supply chain. If you're the HR leader of an organization, you need to look at your entire people's supply chain and then say, what are the things that you need to start doing differently at each stage of the employee life cycle. What do you do before the employee joins? How do you attract talent? What kind of employer branding, employer value proposition that you have? How do you engage with universities? How do you engage with professional institutions? How do you really reach out to the young generation and then attract them to your company? What strategy do you have? We need to think about it. What's our hiring experience? Some of our previous speakers, when we had the session on recruitment, we're talking about onboarding experience and hiring experience. In most organizations, hiring experience is pathetic. It's like, you are running a factory where thousands of people walk in and then go through the interview process and selection process. Very, very cumbersome, tiring process, which really doesn't create a positive experience. How do you create a positive experience during hiring and onboarding? Do you have a gamified onboarding program? Is it a series of lectures delivered by senior leaders in the company? Or is a gamified onboarding program where through games, different activities, they get to know about your organization? Let's think about it. How are we engaging our generational workforce, people from multiple generations at the workplace through different strategies? How do you engage with them? Do we coach our people? Do we have the cohorts? Have you created a collaborative environment? Have we created a culture of performance? Have we created these forums where people can come and share? How are we developing our people? The way people used to learn in the past and the way the millennials learn today is very different. What's the learning strategies? Is mentoring part of a learning strategy? Do you have social learning through collaboration, enterprise social media platform, various other platforms, immersive learning, the technologies like artificial intelligence, automated reality, augmented reality, virtual reality, etc., have they been embedded into our curriculum programs? Peer-to-peer learning, challenging assignments. How are we growing our population? We talked about, when we looked at the statistics, we said the cost of replacing a millennial is about $20,000. And a millennial stays for about 2 hours in an organization. So what are we doing to retain people in the organization by giving them growth opportunities? One of the strategies that we adopt in our organization is immersive learning. The learning strategy that we have is creating a curriculum for our employees which is highly personalized to the needs of the individual. And using that, we have been able to crunch the cycle time to hit the floor, the production floor, and also the cycle time to reach the subject matter level expertise significantly because the learning has been more adaptive. So if somebody is able to learn faster, or if he or she brings more relevant experience, the curriculum will self-adjust itself, and that becomes more suited to the learner. If the learner already knows something, or if he's moving faster, he can drop some practice sessions and then move forward with the next topics. So adaptive learning is a great strategy, but organizations, the best-in-class organizations, have started using. So leveraging the generational workforce, leveraging the strength of generational workforce is all about looking at the entire people supply chain, looking at the entire employee life cycle. It's not about driving some initiatives, programs in isolation. I know I'm running really, it's over time. That's what the computer tells me. I've overshot my time. This is where I would like to pause here with a great quote from Kennedy, who talks about the power of diversity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mohapatra. I request Tuhin Sen from ETH to kindly come up on stage and present Surya Prakash Mohapatra with a small memento as a token of our appreciation. Thank you, sir. Well, with that, we break for lunch. So you can proceed towards lunch by taking the exit here. to the pre-function area near the grand ballroom. There are 2 buffet counters, so if you see queuing at any particular buffet counter, be mindful that there are 2, so just join the line. I'm sure they'll be queuing at both. And as you leave, just a couple of announcements. You can experience a new kind of gaming for workplace recreation, a Japanese technology experience from Play Ports. That's just outside this ballroom on the right-hand side. And as technology impacts various industries, we need to relook how we plan, hire, and develop talent. LinkedIn Talent Solutions is the booth to help you with some answers, and that's in this ballroom to the right. So please do visit these 2 booths and have a good lunch. Happy networking. See you in 40 minutes from now. Sorry to push you, but in the interest of keeping proceedings on track and trying to pull back some time, let's meet in 40 minutes from now. Have a good lunch.